Let's go ahead and get started. This is Melissa Blythe from the Jordan Institute at UNC Chapel Hill School of Social Work. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. We will be talking today from 10:30 to 12 about qualitative case reviews. And we have really tried to set this up as sort of a Q&A with some folks from the state and from 3 different counties to let you hear a little bit about some of what's happening in the state right now around quality case reviews. So let's go ahead and get started. So the goals of this webinar are, first of all, to identify models of quality case review in North Carolina. In other words, we want to just share a little bit about what's happening right now in this area. We also are going to talk a little bit about some of the benefits, particularly in the areas of staff professional development and supervision, practice improvement, and really overall quality improvement efforts. We'll also talk about some of the common challenges of doing, quality case record reviews and what some of our panelists have done to try to overcome them in their own agencies. I guess the bigger picture is that as part of the child welfare system, the vision, I think, is that, quality case reviews can really be a helpful part of our effort to effectively monitor practices and improve practices in order to improve outcomes for children and families, which, of course, we know is why all of you come to work each day. So we hope that some of what you hear today is just a little, is a help to you along the way. So just briefly, I'm going to do a very quick orientation to this online meeting site. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then, as I said, we will let you know first about a model that's being used by the Division of Social Services, and there have been 5 counties who have piloted that model, including Pitt County. So we'll hear from folks from the Division in Pitt County, and then we have folks from Cumberland and Durham County DSS to talk about what their QCR models look like and some of the differences. We're then going to have just some time for some Q&A with the panel and hopefully with all of you about sort of the logistics of how to do quality case review, if this is not something your agency is doing right now or if it doesn't seem to be working as well as you'd like in your agency, and then about some of the benefits and challenges. And again, we really hope that you will use that chat box and let us know. It looks like we're having some trouble with the visuals, with folks not being able to see the slides. So I'm sorry about that. I don't know if with all of the weather, we've had some kind of weird computer stuff going on this morning. So I apologize if you are having trouble with that. What we would ask is one thing that can really help is to just leave the webinar room and then click to come back into it. So in other words, just click on that little red in the upper, or little X, whatever color it is, in the upper right-hand corner of your screen and come back into the room. We'll let you back in. That may not solve it, but hopefully it might. And also, if you have your handouts, and hopefully, maybe John, could you put the link, the direct link for the handouts in the chat box? Because if you are not able to see the slides, we also have the slides for you in the back of your handouts, so you could access the information that way. And let me get that. Thank you, John. He's just, there it is. Thanks so much. Okay. So again, most of you have already found this. The chat box is how you can communicate with each other. And again, if you're having a problem, you may see a second box light up that lets you know someone is trying to send you a private chat, and it is probably one of our folks trying to help you with your technical issue. We do also have these little icons. If you look up at the top of the screen, there's the little man raising his hand. And if you click on that little drop-down menu, you have lots of different options for, laughter, applause, raising your hands, agree or disagree. So just another way to let us know that you're with us or if you have a reaction. So let me go ahead and introduce our panelists, and then I actually have a question for all of you just to get us started. So the first person, and you can see their lovely smiling faces on the screen, the first person you're going to hear from is Cindy O'Brien, and Cindy is a children's program consultant with the Division of Social Services. She is one of two folks right now doing quality assurance reviews for the state, the team that was kind of formerly known as the CFSR team. So you'll be hearing from Cindy about sort of how they've been piloting some new approaches. We also have Tamantha Braddy, and you can see Tamantha's picture as well. Tamantha is a supervisor of intake, assessment, and on-call at Pitt County DSS. And just to give you a sense, when each of the county folks talk, you'll see a map with where their county is. But we also thought, in fact, our presenters thought it might be helpful to have a little sense of context of the size of the agency. So in Pitt County, they have about 130 children in foster care, just to give you a sense of their size. You'll then hear from Shontelle Smith. Shontelle is a foster care supervisor at Durham County DSS, and in Durham County, a similar number of kids in care. They have about 150 children in foster care in Durham. And then you'll hear from Heike Hammer, and Heike is the quality assurance social worker 3 in children's services for Cumberland County DSS, and Cumberland has about 736 children in care. So we've got some different sizes of agencies to help give some ideas about what larger and then some smaller agencies are doing in this area. Again, I'm Millicent Blythe from UNC, and the two folks, my two coworkers that are on with us are Philip Armfield and actually Matt Tarpley is here today. You'll hear from Matt, not Philip, and John McMahon, and they are both on here to make sure we capture your questions and can respond to any technical issues. John is also, as part of that process, as you may know if you've done previous webinars, after this event, we will send out a follow-up document to capture the questions and answers that come up during this event. And so we will do our very best to answer all of your questions while we are on live together. But if we don't get to your question, or if you miss it, or you want to share the information with others, we will be sending out a follow-up document afterwards. And the last thing I'll say is that we are recording this webinar, and so it will also be available. And when we send you out that follow-up document, we will also send you a link to the recorded webinar so that you or others in your agency can access that. So before we get started or go farther on our, oh gosh, never mind. Sorry, I just realized. Let me take us back. We're just going to skip that. We had some technical problems this morning. Let me bring our slides back up, and we will go right on to our panelists. Okay, so let me actually just give you a little background for today. We're throwing around some terms here, and I just want to make sure that everybody is on the same page with these terms. Of course, I know y'all are familiar with CFSR, the Child and Family Services Review, and as you know, that is the federal government's periodic reviews of each of the state's child welfare systems. So when we talk about CFSR, of course, that's what we're talking about. And as you know, those reviews focus on 3 areas of safety, well-being, and permanence for kids in care. And they look at both, is North Carolina as a state following the federal requirements, but also trying to get a sense of what's actually happening to children and families in being served by the child welfare system in each state. We also will talk a lot about CQI, which many of you have been hearing. That's a big buzzword, and it refers to continuous quality improvement. That can mean different things to different people, but the way that in the child welfare system we're talking about it is a pretty simple. We're talking about a process of identifying, describing, and analyzing what's happening in your agency, and then testing and implementing solutions. So as many of you know, in North Carolina, the REAP initiative has been developed. That's Reaching for Excellence in Accountability and Practice. And REAP is really an effort to bring CQI to the child welfare system in North Carolina. So in some ways, REAP and CQI are kind of synonymous because they're both about using data and information to improve our system. So those are some of the terms we'll be using today. With quality case reviews, if this is something that may be not really familiar to you, there was actually a letter, a Dear County Director letter that came out in April. But many agencies in North Carolina and beyond use quality case reviews, and the hope is that it can really be a useful part of your continuous quality improvement efforts, it will also be a part of the next round of the federal review. We know that's getting a lot of attention from the federal government. And so part of what Cindy will talk about is the effort to build statewide capacity for doing good quality assurance on records and really mining that data in order to do our state level review. So before I go on, any questions that folks have about this webinar or any of the terms we've talked about so far? Yes, and thank you, John. That Deer County Director letter that talks about quality case reviews is on pages 2 and 3 of your handouts. Okay, well, feel free to type in any questions, and now I will be quiet and turn it over.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Thanks for being here today. I know everybody is all excited about finding out about our future CFSR. Go ahead. There. Oh, it's a little loud. Technical difficulties. There, how's that? Okay. That everyone is excited about their about the federal CFSR that we're hearing about is going to happen. What I'm going to talk to you about today is some of the efforts that we've been doing ahead of that. We've had a qualitative case review process that we've taken baby steps on, trying to figure out a way that we can do ongoing reviews and have counties do ongoing reviews so that we can get this data and use it to the benefit of children in North Carolina. We had, as most of you know, we suspended our CFSR efforts a couple of years ago in advance of round 3, thinking that we were going to hear a lot sooner than we did, but we have now heard from the Children's Bureau, and we are on for round 3 starting in 2015, and we are again one of the first counties, one of the first states that will be conducting their CFSR early on in 2015. The main thing to think about is that there is an importance of a record review system. The only way you can make a quality, a continuous improvement in your agency and in your practice is to have a quality case review system. One of the things that we've focused on in this is that using resources that are available. That's always a challenge for all counties and the state as well. And then for our REAP counties, what we have been really encouraging is the use of using your data that you get from your reviews and having that help you shape your decisions about your practice. And that you include all sorts of cases and all sorts of diversity. It's not so much whether or not the case is successful in like obtaining permanence or completing the in-home services part, but on what it is that the agency actually does with the family and for the child, and seeing if that practice is what you want your practice to look like. Counties may have a record review system already in place, and so what we've been doing is taking a look at some counties that have those record evaluation systems in place and seeing what we can learn from them and pass on to others. So not everybody's record review system will look the same, but if we can get it to where the data can provide what we need to know and what we need to report to the Children's Bureau, then that might be a way to do successful monitoring in North Carolina. I think that's it for that one. Okay. When we're talking about QCRs, and this is actually QCR and CFSR can be interchanged. CFSR, of course, is the federal process. What we're thinking about in North Carolina is a more local monitoring type process. So when you're looking at a qualitative case review, you're looking at an individual agency and how are they going to monitor what their practice is. So it's a select small sample of cases. And what we found in most counties that are doing a CQI system, they have they have a team, or they have a set person or a set unit or some kind of system that will take a look at those records. And they interview everyone involved, so it includes the caseworker and the child and the family, and these are actually face-to-face interviews, foster parents, attorneys, service providers, anybody that would have a significant impact on that case. And then there's structured protocol guides that help us decide, what is the practice doing? And you're looking at, what was the outcome, what is the current status, and then, of course, you're looking at all the factors that went into that quality of practice that led to that outcome. The idea is that you can learn from case to case to case, and it can shape your achievement plan or your plan for improvement if you have one, and it can help you make decisions about where you want to focus your resources, because, as we all know, all of us have limited resources. Is there another slide? Okay. We've had a pilot that we started the 1st of April, and this was just a chance to take a look at how this might work, and it's a baby step. What we've done is we took a look at our training, the division's training to counties, that when we would train you for a CFSR and we would come in and use a mock case, and it might be good for a short while you're preparing to do your Child and Family Services review, but then that training and the review outcomes and everything would just go on a shelf, and you'd wait for the next time you had to endure it. We know this. We know it's true. And when we would go and do Child and Family Services reviews, every county would tell us, we need something different. We need something that's more meaningful and easier to use. So we decided to try a different tact at training, and we utilized our REAP counties that were participating. We asked for volunteers, voluntold, to be our guinea pigs, if you will. And what we did was we said, okay, let's do a pretend CFSR sort of thing. And we went first to day one training, where we went to the county and we trained in person what that instrument is asking. Not necessarily what's the right answer, what's the wrong answer, but what is it asking? And teaching supervisors, because our main focus was to look at supervisors, teaching them to ask that of themselves. When I'm reviewing a record with a worker, what is it I want to find? What is it I want to see in addressing this item on the review tool? And so we did a lot of different things. We did some coaching, we did some role play, and this was spontaneous. This wasn't like we ordered somebody to do role play. And then we had another meeting about a month later. And during that month, we had received 3 records from that county that they selected. And then we would review those records, and they had their teams review those records. Then we come back together for a second day of the training where we actually go over and staff those records. There's no measurement. We're not taking a measurement of how they performed or how the outcomes turned out. We took more of a look at how did you get to the answer, and where else, what could you possibly do that would be different using the resources that you have in-house. So it was very tailored to those counties. Unfortunately, those counties also agreed to be in this pilot to where we are doing reviews, and we've conducted the first month of the pilot. It's a 3-month pilot, and we will be doing 30 records over that 3 months that will be reviewed or actually being measured. And we will be reporting this data to the Children's Bureau as we in anticipation of our upcoming CFSR in 2015. So with all this basically is a data source. Those counties, each of those 5 counties, will get a report of their outcomes of the 6 records, or excuse me, the 10 records. Right? No, it's 6 records. The 6 records of their county over the 3-month period, they'll get a report just like you got a report when CFSR was completed. And then at the end of the pilot, there will also be an overall report of how the pilot as a whole did. So there won't be necessarily identification of individual counties in that report. The hope is that with the CFSR that is coming in 2015, there is a different opportunity for North Carolina. There's 2 tracks that the CFSR could take. One track is the traditional CFSR as you've had in the past. And the other track, which we would love to be able to get to do, is to kind of have where we do the reviews and we send that data to the Children's Bureau, and they use that data as our information for CFSR. The idea is that basically what we thought about with QCRs is that if we can get the counties to do internal reviews and do their own CQI system, then we become a second level of that CQI system, and then the feds become a third level. So not sure how soon that will happen, but it is an idea that is as rather intriguing, and we're hoping that we can possibly try this. So mainly our goal for this pilot has been to have counties get their start up with internal processes and see if we can get both of us, both the division and the counties, on the same plane of reviewing records. I think that's everything.
Thank you so much, Cindy. That was a lot to cover because I know there have been so many changes in this area. So again, go ahead and chat questions if you have questions for Cindy about what the division has been doing or about this pilot. And meanwhile, I'm going to pass the mic to Tamantha from Pitt County so she can tell you a little bit about what it's been like to be one of those pilot counties and what their quality case review system is looking.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here this morning and to share with you what we're doing for QCR in Pitt County. When Rita called us and asked us did we want to be a part of this process, we were really excited about it. We did not have a formalized review process in our county, and we had for several years been using our own in-house review tool to look at cases once they were closed and be able to provide some feedback that way. So this has given us a more structured way of reviewing cases, given us the opportunity to partner with the state to look at how we're doing and using the review tool. And I just have to say that Cindy and Michael have been wonderful to work with. And when we first started this process, we met together as a supervisory group and discussed what we wanted it to look like and the best way to implement it, and we decided that we were not going to really set a formalized protocol around it. We wanted to just kind of, step into it and see how it evolved and look at what worked and what didn't work throughout that process, and then come away with a more formal protocol of what we wanted to do. So when we met as a group, we wanted to make sure that all of our child welfare supervisors and line staff participated in this. So we made it part of our work performance plan, and we made sure that we did it so everybody would be able to achieve this. And we set up 3 teams, and we had at least one supervisor on each team, and then we chose social workers from assessments, in-home, and placement and adoptions and licensing, so that we had a cross-representation from all 3 functions on our team. And then to get us started, we did a Connect Pro meeting with Cindy and Michael and Rita and went over the review tool and came away with an understanding of what we needed to be looking for in our cases and how to apply that tool. And that was, good information that helped us, but when we actually started applying it, we found that there were a lot more questions. And so, we made our copies and sent them off to the state, and while they reviewed the case, we reviewed it. And how we selected the case was we felt like assessments really got left out a lot as far as being reviewed. So we wanted to choose cases where assessments would be under our period of review. And we had one supervisor to select those cases. And when we got through reviewing the tools, we met with Cindy and Michael. They came to our agency, and we compared our review with their review, and we literally went item by item, page by page, and discussed, how we arrived at the decision that we came to. And I think that this experience, going through that process was different for each team, because we left it up to that team to decide how they were going to come together and do that. And when we got through, we saw that there were some areas that we needed to improve on, which kind of mirrored what our REAP performance plan is, our achievement plan, and that was good. Saw some areas that we had some strengths in, and one of the things that we felt like we needed to do was, bring on our next group of people. So what Team 1 did, which we call Team 1 Wave 1, they had to recruit Wave 2. And they were responsible for recruiting social workers. So again, there would be a cross-representation of all three functions, and our next round of cases were reviewed in the same way. And we had Wave 1 and Wave 2 present for that training process and review process, and went through, and Cindy and Michael came back, and we met again and compared our reviews, and now we are officially, in our official review part, and we just had our first round, and like last week. And how we did that was Wave 2. We didn't have a lot of time, so the social workers that were left got assigned to a team, and we still made sure there was the cross-representation, and they reviewed the tool. And what was different about this one is it really did mirror the CFSR that we're used to a little bit more, and because we actually, had interviews with the social worker or the supervisor, with the parent, with the child, with the service provider, and then each team conferenced with Michael and reported out and compared their notes. And then we had a final conference call where the case was debriefed, and we had all the supervisors were invited to attend. If it was your case, you were invited to attend. Anybody that was on the team attended, and then anybody else that was just interested to see what was going on was welcome to attend. So it was a good process, and we're learning a lot. And when we get through with this process, we're hoping to start tracking some data, and we're not sure what that's going to look like yet, but that's where we're headed.
Thank you, Tamantha. I want to just also say, so Michael, who she's talking about, is Michael Ward, who is the other consultant for the division on the QA team. So it's been Cindy O'Brien and Michael Ward who have been doing those consultations with these counties. And Tamantha, before you finish, can you just mention, you had talked before about sort of if issues come up with in review, sort of how that information gets passed on to the worker and what that's been like for workers in your area.
Yeah. One thing that we did not want was for this to be a I gotcha type of thing. We wanted this to very much be a learning experience, to be a coaching experience, and there are times that there are going to be issues in the records, and what we found very helpful about that, and we were happy to see, was when Cindy and Michael came and they wanted to talk about those issues. When the meeting was over, they met with their program manager to discuss that issue that they saw in private. It was not shared with the whole group, and then what happens is the supervisor and the social worker of the case meet to discuss any issues. This is not something that when we find issues that we're wanting to say, oh, well, you didn't do this and this according to the QCR process, and it's going on your evaluation. We really want this to be a learning experience to help our social workers grow, to help us all be on the same page, and ultimately, we feel like families are going to benefit from that, and it's going to help strengthen families and help us make sure that children are safe. And so this was not anyway a punitive experience. It really was a good experience for us, and I know some of our staff may not feel that way, but we are trying really hard to just reiterate and make sure that this is a comfortable experience, and we are all walking away learning something good from this.
That's great. Thank you so much, Tamantha. Okay, we do have one question I just want to put out from Wendy Beckham. I'm looking around to see, I'm not sure, can anyone tell me what the language form is regarding CQI review of assessments? I'm not looking. So, Wendy, maybe what we'll do is we will try to follow up with you privately, get a little more clarification, and if we can't answer it on live, then we'll try to include that information in the follow-up document. You'll also have the contact information in your of our presenters. And then another question, I think, Tamantha, for you from Linda Alexander. For clarity, did you say teams consisted of family assessors, in-home service workers, adoption workers, and foster care workers?
Yes, we had assessors from, whether it was investigative or family. We just made sure that we had our assessors present. Our intake social workers are part of a team, as well as our on-call social workers. And then we had the representation from in-home and then from placement, adoptions, and licensing.
All right, thank you. So keep those questions coming. They're here. And meanwhile, I'm going to pass the mic on to Shontelle from Durham County, and she can tell you a little bit about what their QCR process is.
Good morning. I bring you greetings from Durham County DSS. In Durham County, we have implemented two different QCR processes. And the first process that was implemented was the peer review, where colleagues from across the sections, meaning child placements and child protective services, work together to review a case. We utilize the CFSR tool, and it is a process that is done quarterly, and we are told about the cases ahead of time. We do not select the cases ourselves. We are informed by our QA analysts, and we have up to 3 months to get it done, so that gives us a little bit of time to arrange our schedules with one another. And it does include the social worker who would be debriefed on that case, and if we had any questions, we could interview who we would like. We are brought in, usually inviting our consultant from the state to hear what our trends and patterns are, and just to continue to have teachable moments for the supervisors and also for the social workers. So again, it's something that we do on a quarterly basis. And so far, I think that it's been a really positive process. I think overall we are determined to improve the quality of services that we provide to the Durham County community, but also to grow our social workers, as Tabitha said, from Pitt County, just to continue to develop them, encouraging them with their work, knowing that child welfare is a difficult field to be in, applauding them for the great work that they do, but also identifying areas that they can grow in, but utilizing that positively. Again, nothing to penalize them. It's nothing that is ever reflected on performance evaluations, but more so just to look at how a supervisor could better train their unit or their social worker if we see a trend with one supervisor and her group or his group of social workers. And also to get the input of the social worker so that they can reflect upon how they felt like that case went. Was there a challenge that they weren't aware of? Did they have questions in regards to providing a certain service to a family? And I think that it's become a culture, or organizational culture for Durham County, that this is the expectation and it continues to go on. The second process is the review by the quality insurance analyst. And she selects, it says every month, but she selects it every other month. And it's a less extensive tool with additional issues that we have identified as a county. And she notifies us through email. And we have a deadline to get the copy or the dictation and any information to her, and also our program manager if necessary. And she pulls cases from across all service, so it will be intake. Even she does screen outs, assessments. She also does foster care and adoption. So it's across the spectrum for her to look at the work that Durham County is providing to the families. This is an interesting thing that just occurred for us, that the results of her review is emailed first to our director, our assistant director, and our program manager. And our program manager shares those results with the supervisors. And he shares it in a manner that is, again, I think very positive for us, just looking at the great work that we're doing, encouraging us, but then also looking at the things that maybe we need to look down the line at, some training opportunities, out-of-home service agreements. Are we completing those in a timely manner? Family services agreements, what's missing out of the file? And, are we making those visits, those monthly visits that are required? And so that is presented to us, and we're able to look at the tool. They also give us an opportunity, if we know that something was completed, to share that information with our program manager. And that is done basically going back, looking at the tool, and looking in the files and indicating this is the date that it was put in the file, because we have an electronic filing system at this point. And then definitely giving that information to the program manager, who in turn takes it to the quality insurance team to let them know that we were able to locate certain items in the record that were completed. So we do get an opportunity to increase the percentage based on having discussion as a group, and also bringing the QA individual in and discussing with her our thoughts about the review. It is definitely a focus on learning for the supervisor as well. I think that if you've been in your position for some time, you become accustomed to doing work a certain way. And I think Durham County is pushing us to look outside of the box, making sure that we are growing our workers, that we're not becoming complacent with the work that we do, but continue to challenge us to do great work. In turn, seeing that the outcomes improve for our families and our children. We provide staff with feedback. And that's usually done individually. If a case is pulled and the worker is aware that the case is pulled, we provide the feedback to them. And again, that's an opportunity to use it as a teachable moment. And if they have any questions based off of that review, that's a time for them to honestly speak with their supervisor about the question or why something wasn't done. I think that it's important for us to to meet with the direct staff line who do the work every day to see what challenges they experience. So if there's any information that we need to take back to management, that we can do that as well. So I believe, like, overall, again, this is a culture change for Durham County. We're really pushing it, and it's been beneficial for supervisors, new supervisors, and also just to have a refresher for seasoned supervisors, so we can be on the same page and consistent across the sections in regards to how we serve and how we show up with families.
That's great. Thank you so much, Shontelle. I'm just looking to see, I don't think any other questions have come in. I did want to also mention that starting on, I think it's about page 6, you have a copy of one of the case review tools that they use in Durham County, and this is the one for adoption services. You also have, starting on page 9, I think, an example from Cumberland County of the intake decision. And those are just some examples of sort of tools that have been adapted and customized based on what the county, what some of the county needs are, which I think speaks to what Cindy said of, you know, wanting to help counties take that state review that, you know, based on the federal process and adapt it to the needs that you have in your county. Okay, so again, keep the questions coming, and meanwhile, I'm going to turn the mic over to Heike so she can tell you a little bit about what this process looks like in Cumberland.
Good morning from Cumberland County. Cumberland County actually has a dedicated program evaluation team. We started out actually one trainer who reviewed adult services and children's services cases. Then it evolved into the children's services trainer reviewing children's services cases in between the trainings. Now, years later, we have this dedicated program evaluation team. We have 2 children's services quality assurance social workers that conduct reviews of our cases. We actually have 3 different types of quality case reviews that we do. We conduct ongoing quality case reviews where we alternate the services that we review. We'll choose from whichever program area, be it 210, 215, 109, or adoptions. And these reviews are conducted using the portion of the state review tool that would apply to the program being evaluated. For an ongoing review, we would pull cases depending upon the program. We would use a report from Exporter for a foster care, to select foster care cases. And we would use like Data Warehouse to pull 215 or 210 cases to review. We made sure that there was an even distribution of cases reviewed across units, and the number pulled dependent upon what we were finding. We may do an initial review of, say, 210 services, and then based upon the findings, we may expand the review. With each review, the findings are debriefed with the social worker and the social work supervisor, and then a write-up of the overall findings is provided to management. The second type of review that we conduct is actually an annual mock quality case review. This type of review, we try to mirror an actual state review as closely as possible. We choose our case sample based upon the stratification that's set forth by the state, or that was in the last formal review. We select these cases, again, from Exporter for the 109, Data Warehouse for the 215, and we choose a total of 12 cases, 8 foster care, and then 4 in-home care, and the 210 portion, if that falls within our sample period, then we review the 210 portion of that, that case as well. And these cases are identified only by sample numbers. We pull social workers and social work supervisors to participate in our review process. Usually the social worker and the social work supervisors take on the role of the county for training purposes, and then the 2 quality assurance social workers the Children's Services Trainer and the Program Evaluation Supervisor take on the role of the state reviewer because of their experience using the review tool. We conduct an entrance conference and we encourage the Children's Services staff to attend. We complete the state review tool on each case and we conduct interviews with the social worker involved in the case. Then upon completion of the review, we conduct an exit conference to inform the staff of the findings, and it's a chance for learning and to recognize good work. We provide a formal write-up of the findings to management after completion of the review, and we actually have our next mock review scheduled for May 19th through the 23rd. We're very careful to ensure the integrity of the review, so no social worker or social work supervisor reviews their own cases. The third type of review that we conduct is a targeted case review. And we schedule reviews in different areas that we may find need improvement or oversight based upon observed trends. Reviewing one area can show you other areas that you may need to take a look at. So some reviews are identified by our program evaluations team, and then other times our reviews come from specific requests made by supervisors, program managers, section chiefs, etc. Recently we conducted a review specific to kinship placements. We looked at the timeliness of the completion of the face sheet and the initial kinship assessment, completion of the background checks, follow-up and timely completion of the comprehensive kinship assessment, and so forth. The targeted reviews depend upon what we're finding. So we've conducted reviews strictly on monthly contacts or completion of tools, the safety, the risk, strengths and needs assessments. And then one of the forms that was included was an evaluation that we did on case decisions, the use of services provided, protective services no longer needed, and then the services recommended case decision. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Heike. I know Cumberland is really fortunate and has made the plan to have that team, and so I think it's great to hear sort of about the spectrum. We've got Pitt County, which is really just developing your process, and then Cumberland County, which has been developing a process over several years. So I think they're great examples of whatever the current level of resources or capacity in your county, that there's lots of opportunity. So let's talk a little bit, and feel free again to add your questions to the chat box. We have one we're tracking down, but we wanted to think a little bit about what are some of the benefits and also what are some of the challenges of doing more quality case reviews in your agencies, because we know there are both benefits and challenges. So let's be strengths-based. We're going to start with the upside, and so wanted to just ask, and folks, our panel can answer sort of any of these questions, to what are the benefits that you've seen using this process? In particular, we understand it's had some influence on supervision and staff development as well as CQI. So I'll just open it to all three of you to talk a little bit about any of those areas. What do you see as some of the primary benefits? I don't know, Tamantha, do you want to go first?
I think it helps to, like Shontelle was saying, it helps to build the culture of your agency, and that's always a positive thing. And I think it also serves, when we are pulling social workers together from the different functions, it helps them to see what happens outside of their own function. And as one social worker said, what happens in this function really does impact the next function. So they were able to kind of connect the dots on a case that went from assessments to in-home into child placement, and I think that was a good experience for that person. And so if she's having that moment, there are others that are bound to be having those moments as well.
I think that's that's something we hear a lot in the training room. Is sometimes we do hear people say, well, I don't do assessments, so I don't need to know about that, or I don't do foster care, so I don't need to know about that. But I love that idea of getting those cross-unit teams so that people can see those connections.
Right. I also think that it's really good that staff is being actively involved, and the plan is to keep them involved, and what that's going to look like, over the course of the next year, we're not sure yet, because we're going to have each team to report out on what their experience was and their recommendations for going forward, but we want to keep our staff involved, and, because that helps to build buy-in, from the ground up, and a lot of times that's where it really needs to start, is from the ground up. And so, and ultimately, I just think that going through this process is really going to be a benefit for our families and our children.
Great, thank you, Tamantha. How about Heike or Shontelle? Would one of you want to go?
I think just a ditto. It's a mutual respect for the work that everyone does. I think that we have seen improvement in the casework. We're able to recognize, issues and be able to guide our workers. So it's helped me become, I think, a more effective supervisor. What things do I need to be really looking at to help shape, the work that's being done in the unit with the families. So I think overall, although this, it can feel a certain way when your work is pulled and people are looking at it, I think the benefits outweigh those feelings of, oh, here we go again. They're going to penalize me because this wasn't done. I think that overall we have seen such improvement in the work that our social workers are providing to families that I encourage every county out there to implement a process.
Yeah, in Cumberland County, when we first started, folks were not necessarily happy when they had a case pulled for review. There was a lot of uncertainty. They wanted to know why we needed it, when they would get it back, who would see it. Now people are excited. They want to have their cases reviewed. They want to participate in the mock review. There's a definite transfer of learning. They have an opportunity to see what a reviewer is looking for and to see how the policy applies to what they're actually doing. It supports supervisors and helps them provide quality supervision. It can help identify areas that a worker may be struggling with and enable that supervisor to help that particular social worker, whether it's just clarification of policy or the need for additional training. In our agency, the social work trainer is part of our program evaluation team, so the results of our quality case reviews inform training development. They go hand in hand.
That's great, thank you. And how about, we know some of you alluded to these, some of the common challenges, and you may have already answered this, but if you would add anything, how did staff initially respond to this idea? And in particular, what were some of the concrete things that were done to address that? I think, Shontelle, I remember you spoke a little bit about how supervisors present the information. So can you say a little bit about sort of concrete things that have helped to engage?
I think it's important how a supervisor presents the information. If you're positive and you see it as an opportunity for yourself to learn and grow, and then you present it to your worker, they're going to be more receptive to your guidance and also the process. It's also very important for workers to be included in the review. They're included in the debriefing, and like I said initially, nerves, they were anxious, and I don't really have time for this, but it's been a positive outcome for them, just being able to sit in and other supervisors recognizing the work, their great work that they're doing, and so it's across the board. And we celebrate. So yes, we've seen some things that we need to improve on, but we definitely celebrate what we're doing well with working with families in Durham County.
In Cumberland, as I had said, the process can seem somewhat negative and it can be intimidating. So it's important to have full disclosure. Prepare the staff, explain everything, explain what you're doing and why and how long it will take, who's involved. It builds trust to just be transparent. The other challenge is finding a way to relay the data or outcomes in a manner that engages the staff and holds their attention. When we started really utilizing data and coming up with percentages, charts, graphs, it looked pretty, but it was a challenge to present the data without having folks get that glazed over look. Standing in front of the room just talking about numbers and percentages wasn't getting the message across. So we had to find ways to make it interesting and understandable, and we had to get pretty creative. In one section meeting, we relayed data through skits where different staff members volunteered to play roles in the skit. So you have to find ways to engage your audience.
That's great. Thank you, Heike. And can you tell, wasn't there one where you shared, I don't know if that was from a case review, where you had people like hold up different popsicle sticks? Like, can you talk a little bit about that? Because that was also really creative.
We were trying to get across the number of children that we currently have in a backlog. So my counterpart and I, Ketsi, we came up with popsicle sticks, and we put faces of children on 700 some popsicle sticks, and in a section meeting we distributed them across to everybody, and so everybody had, I don't know, 10 or so sticks, and we came up with a skit. It was the Kingdom of Ramsey, and having the social workers hold up however many number of sticks. You know, we would have codes on the back that would say, you know, the age of the child or how long they had been in care. When you do that visual and you have people see, they look around the room and see how many sticks there are in the air, and these are all, you know, sticks with faces of children on them, it really makes an impact. You really see, oh my gosh, that's a lot of kids in custody. So.
That's great. Thank you. And we also have a question from Tony Carpenter. Do your supervisors review all records assigned to their unit prior to closure, or is that done by your data analysts, I guess, for both Durham and Cumberland?
In Durham County, the supervisors review all of the records prior to closure. But depending on how long a case is open, it can definitely be reviewed by our analysts.
And I guess, Shontelle, can I just add, what would you say, or is there a way how you would describe sort of what the supervisor does in reviewing a record at closure might be different from, say, the peer review, record review process?
I believe it's not as intensive as the peer review process, because if you are reviewing the record all along and receiving the information that's required, then it's just a couple of things that you need to be looking for within the record. So I do feel like peer review is a little more intensive. And a majority of our records are being reviewed regularly. Like I said, we have the two processes, and so we are aware with cases that come into child placement through the review what is needed and what's required, and make sure that we stay on top of that after the review. So it's not as intensive.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And it sounds like also that peer review really is able to sort of give you a higher level of the full life of a case.
Yes.
As opposed to whatever's just happened. Yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you. Heike, would you add anything else? Do you have any sort of regular review on closing?
Our quality assurance folks, we don't have anything to do with case closure. You know, the supervisor and the social worker, they would staff the case. If it's a 210, you know, that goes to a staffing where it's an entire unit sitting in, two units sitting in, reviewing the case, you know, making the case decision and the decision to close. If it's a say a 215, 109, you know, well, 109, of course, depends upon the court's ruling. But 215, I mean, those cases are staffed between the supervisor and the social worker.
Okay, thank you. So again, thank you. Keep those questions coming. Another, I know, really big challenge for everyone is just the time management piece that I'm sure, you know, lots of agencies or supervisors who might really like to do this kind of process. I know it's a challenge to fit it into your schedule. even if you have an analyst, your supervisors and social workers still need to make time to participate. So can you talk a little bit about what changes have you made in terms of staff responsibilities or your meeting schedule, or you know, how you're prioritizing time or scheduling time in order to sort of sustain this, so that it's not, as you said, Cindy, you know, just something that happens every few years and then you put it on a shelf, but that it becomes part of how you do business?
For us in Pitt County, we really didn't make any changes as far as staff responsibilities. What we did was give them about approximately 4 weeks to meet together as a team to have the case reviewed, and they were responsible for getting together and scheduling that time, whether they did it all in one day or broke it out over a period of 2 or 3 days. And that, you know, while it is time consuming, and, you know, everybody kind of feels like we don't have time for this, this is just another thing, you know, it's not going to last, why are we doing this, you know, having them be able to schedule that themselves, I think, is a positive. And, you know, this is something that we are going to continue, and it's not going away.
I agree. Durham County, our QA analysts place the next review on our calendars well in advance. So the last review we had in Durham County was in February. Immediately after the debriefing, I could say a day after the debriefing of our peer review, she placed the next review on our calendar, and which is May 22nd. And so from the end of February to May, we have that time to review the case. And so we have to coordinate with our colleagues when is the best time. And that can be challenging because, well, as you know, child welfare is unpredictable. But it's an effort that we make to ensure that we get together and we pull the information that's necessary. We have a deadline to turn in the tool to our program managers. And so that is something that is also placed on our calendar. So the deadline for the tool, and then also when we're going to debrief that case. When the debriefing occurs, we don't require the social workers to stay the entire time. We allow them to hear their case and ask any questions and have give them the opportunity to give feedback about the process, and then we allow them to go on with their day, understanding that their time is very valuable. It's something that we continue to look at because we recognize that it's a bigger picture. What we do every day, it relates to the outcomes for children and families. So it's something that we take very seriously, and something that is again, the culture of Durham County. So we know that every quarter this is something that is going to occur, and every other month our QA analyst is going to ask for us to provide information so that she can review cases as well. And I didn't say this earlier, but if she reviews a case, that case will never be reviewed through the peer review process. So they're separate cases to make sure that we're covering the number of cases that are required to be covered. So we are definitely getting a lot of cases reviewed in Durham County just based off those two different processes.
That's great. Thank you, Shontelle. How about, Heike, can you say a little bit about Cumberland County, how you manage the time?
Cumberland's a little bit different because we have the dedicated QA positions, but for staff, you know, the social workers and the social work supervisors, when we do the mock each year, the workers' calendars are blocked off for that entire week, and we have enormous support from our management team. They value the process and they see it as essential, so they give that protected time for it.
That's great, thank you. I'm just looking, I don't think we have any other questions, so again, feel free to keep those questions coming based what's happening in your county, or if you have examples from your county about how you all manage the issues of time and staff engagement. We would love to hear from each other. Another question, Tamantha, from Tony Carpenter, when you did your review, how did your results compare to those of the division when you when you got together to compare what each of you had done?
Actually, I think we found that we were probably a little harder on ourselves than what Cynthia and Michael was. But overall, it matched up. I think one of the lessons that my review team learned coming away was, don't belabor it. It's either there or it's not. And we could spend hours searching and searching, but overall I think that our outcomes were pretty much the same. And then the areas where we had differences, we had some good discussion around those areas.
I would say that one of the best things about that process was that we were coming in at the supervisor level, and so we were actually, in the practice, we were actually stopping and saying, okay, let's revisit this, let's look at it, and because the supervisor would ask, well, what does that look like? We're talking, the items on the CFSR tool, which is like reading a novel from 1700s, but it would be very hard to understand. But then once they would get the idea that it's just this question, this is just what we're looking for, and then we pushed it away and said, okay, now I'm the worker and you're the supervisor. What do you want from me? What questions are you going to ask me? Where do you want to look for that information? And to see this supervisors and workers processing this in the training was really, really good. All of a sudden they were like, well, we do ask this, and it's like, well, there you go. You can write that down. You can use what you have. So
I love that idea. So in other words, they saw something on a form that didn't really make sense to them, but when you just talk to them about how would you deal with that in supervision, then it made sense. So could you remember any examples you could give of sort of an item that they weren't clear about and they came up with some questions about how to assess that in a case?
Oh, well-being, yes. Well-being was one of those, and a key feature to this too, and Tamantha and I were talking about it beforehand, was don't rework the case while you're reviewing it. It's too late. Don't rework the case while you're reviewing it. Instead, take that measured step back and look at it from, you're just measuring, you're just looking. And then when the supervisor can do that in a review, then say, okay, well, now that you're back into your supervisor role, what are you looking for? And in well-being, I think it was about contacts with fathers, maybe. And it's, they know it. They know the policy. They know the practice. They know what they're supposed to do, but maybe it's not showing up in the record. And what it really came down to in a lot of instances was they're doing the work. They're just not documenting it. And so then came the idea of, well, we need to take a real good look at how we document and how we as supervisors review that documentation. They're going full steam, they're writing real fast, and they just don't hit the right topic. You get a whole novel about what the issue is, but you don't get what they did. So that's one of the things that we found consistently across the board when we would do CFSR reviews. So that was one of the things that we just would stop the middle of the training and address it in a practice. So
that's great. Thank you. So another question from Sonia Smith. Does anyone have a review tool for adoption subsidy cases? I don't know. I think, I'm looking at, so you have adoption cases, but not specific to adoption subsidy. No, unfortunately, Sonia, sorry. And also a question, which we knew this would come up, so the CFSR training that we're talking so much about, and you actually have a description in your handouts on page 4, will that be available to other counties, Cindy, or do you know kind of how that might be rolled out?
I don't know. Our hope is that maybe we can turn it into a training that you can get through the division. We just don't know yet at this point, but I will give you a little bit of good news. We have had conversations with the Children's Bureau representatives, and from what we understand right now, the tool that they're going to use in the federal review is actually going to be online. You're going to be able to complete it online, and it's shorter. It's truncated quite a bit, so I know everybody's like, yay, but at the same time, you got to remember, you got to think about what it is they're asking when you're reviewing that tool. When it does come out, make sure you look at it. The availability will be through the Children's Bureau. So it's not going to be through the state. It's going to be through the Children's Bureau. And there's more to come on that. That's about the extent of what they told us last week. So.
Okay, great. Thank you for the questions, and thank you, Tony, for that question. So we'll try to keep you posted. Okay, so we're talking about continuous quality improvement. So let me ask you all, what would you like to see to even further strengthen the QCR processes that you have in your counties to even take things to the next level? What are you looking to do?
In Cumberland County, we've talked about the need to become more proficient in interpreting the data. It would be beneficial to have more training on what does it mean? You know, when okay, so you do this this review or this survey and you have the results. So where do you how do you interpret it, right? We had our first experience of developing a survey, and we did run into a snag when it came to what to do with the data. You know, when you have a total number of folks that responded, it skews your numbers, you know, when you have yes/no questions as opposed to answer all that apply, select all that apply. So, you know, you may have 300 responses to one question, but you only had 200 respondents. We had a little bit of difficulty in taking that data further. So that would be helpful.
All right, thank you, Heike. So, and I know the division and Kathy Dobbs is on with the staff development team, and with REAP, I know there's talk about sort of developing different trainings around data, and so that's and including in the area of qualitative, using qualitative data. So definitely keep your eyes and ears open for more on that. How about Tamantha? Do you want to talk about sort of where you're looking to go?
Right now we will finish up in June, and so we're just trying to get through that process and, you know, hear back from everybody's experiences and, you know, have their input on what they would like this process to look like. So hopefully by the end of 2014 we will have a more formalized process. We're also looking to begin tracking data, and I guess I'm going to be the one to do that. And so I'll start putting that together in July, and you know, just kind of looking to see what is their data telling us, and we feel like we kind of know, you know, where we're going, but it's going to be interesting to see if our data continues to support that theory. And we just really want to have some basic guidelines put in place, and look to see, you know, to make sure that we're having cases pulled from across all areas and that everybody has the opportunity to have their cases reviewed, so nobody's getting left out. And we would love to be able to grow our technology around this so we don't have to do manual reviews, and that's something that we are working on as well. And
great. Okay. And it looks like, Cindy, I think you're responding to Edgecombe when that CFSR tool comes out. Anything you would say to the group about what, if you know yet, of sort of what the plans would be?
What I would say is that it is our hope that we'll be able to use it. If the Children's Bureau puts it online, then we know we'll be able to use it in a way that possibly we could train on it, but we don't know how long they'll keep it online past the review. So we are definitely looking at a way to possibly do a training on the CFSR tool. We've considered some options of possibly using electronic media like this, doing webinars, doing videos, doing, you know, training videos or whatever. So we're looking at a lot of options. We just haven't. We don't have a lot of answers right yet.
All right, thank you. I guess we're going to move on to other Q&A. I'm looking to see if other questions come in, but one of the other points you're wondering, is there anything else other than what you said, other advice you would have if there is a county that right now maybe does not have a formalized quality case review process? What advice would you give them?
I would say, just kind of come together and, just ask yourselves for your own agency, what is it that you want to look at? Do you want to just start with a piece of it? Because like Cumberland County, they do targeted reviews, and I think that's a wonderful idea. And, so is that a place that you would want to start, or would you want to start at the top and, just use the CFSR tool that we're using? And one of the things that I would say is, based on our experience, we've kind of come in with some loosely defined guidelines, and we're letting it grow itself. And, definitely use this as, coaching moments, learning experiences, because supervisors and line staff, we're all growing from this, and, this should be a really positive experience that social workers can come away feeling good about, and that's going to ultimately transfer to the work that they're doing with families who are going to benefit from this. And hopefully when all is said and done, maybe we're going to see less reports coming in because we're going to be doing a better job, maybe less repeat families that are coming through, not necessarily, well, hopefully less repeat maltreatment as well, but maybe our caseloads are going to go down, and hopefully the time that children spend in care, that will decrease as well. That would be a great outcome to all of this.
If I could say something. I would also encourage that, remember that your quality assurance processes that you're doing are all part of your continuous quality improvement. So if you have identified issues that you as an agency have identified that fall into the CFSR, then use that portion of the CFSR tool. Don't throw out the one we currently have because another one's coming. It's going to be the same issues, the same, it's just going to be a different looking form. Maybe if you have issues that are more 4E focused, take a look at the 4E review. And say, okay, what are we doing? And let's analyze how we're doing there. So use the things that you have. Those are your resources, and use them in a consistent way. Form your team or form whoever it is that's going to conduct the quality assurance for you, and just use that consistently. And then you'll get data from that. You can collect that data. Whether or not you report it to the division or to the Children's Bureau is another matter, but you can at least gather that data on your practice. And if anything, it can be a tool that supervisors can use to get the best out of the social worker, to get the best performance out of doing this child welfare work that is so challenging. So I would encourage everyone that as you set up your internal QA processes, that you consider, what do I already have that gives me data and I can use it in a consistent way.
My advice would be just to make sure you utilize a system that works best for your agency. You've heard different ways and processes that Pitt County, Durham County, and Cumberland County, but maybe selecting what you feel like would work best for your department. And starting, I think slow. I think that the process can be very overwhelming, and understanding that frustration is going to be there, but just focusing on the bigger picture, improving the outcomes for children and family.
I would say that I'd recommend that folks become aware of all the data that is out there already, be it exporter, data warehouse management assistant. There's a lot that's out there already that can give you a basic look at how your county is doing and can identify some things that you may want to focus on to start out to develop a QA, internal QA system. There is a training, I believe, an introduction to child welfare data source pilot thing that's coming up. So that would be beneficial.
Yes, that's a great point, Heike. And the division, including some of the folks on the children's reps, they have developed a team, new training, a one-day training, Introduction to Child Welfare Data Sources, and that will be piloted in June. But then I believe, their hope is to start offering that, if possible, as much as once a month around the state. And so you can look for that on NCSW Learn and see as additional dates are scheduled. Just for that reason, to get that initial look at what are some of the sources of data that your agency has now that you can be using, and then to be figuring out when you identify areas of concern, then how to do those targeted quality case reviews to sort of fill in between the lines of what you don't get in a data report. What else do you need to know to dig a little deeper in a certain area? So I'm going to open it up again for questions as I go through. I don't think we have any other ones waiting there. So I'd like to ask all of you, I see some questions coming, so we will continue to answer those because we have a little extra time. But if you would use your chat pad, wherever your agency is in this process, you may have a well-defined review process already. You may not be doing reviews. Wherever you are, what is one thing that you would like to do, that your agency could do to implement or improve quality case reviews in your agency? So if you would just take a few minutes and think about that wherever you are, one thing you plan to do or you would like to do in your agency to implement or improve the quality case review process. And Renee, I see your question about tracking internal data, so don't worry, we will be sure to talk about that a little bit because I know that's a challenge. I'm just going to be quiet for a minute and let folks think about that. Okay, so I see lots of folks are typing. So Carteret County, to look at why families are having multiple reports, excellent idea of those repeat maltreatment or repeat reports. And Janet Miller likes the idea of cross-program reviews. I think that's, I agree. So supervisors, it sounds like we have multiple counties where supervisors are doing those case reviews, but adding in that level of cross-team review and learning. But let me ask, so we had two questions about basically tracking data from your quality case reviews. So we had Renee Kennedy asking, how do you track your internal data, like when you have case reviews by supervisors? And then Orange County also asking about whether you're, if you're tracking data, if you're seeing trends. So let me just ask you to speak, if you would, about sort of how are you taking those individual case reviews and sort of aggregating or tracking to see what the pattern.
For Pitt County, again, we don't have, a true formalized process for tracking that data. That's something that we're working on, and I'll be putting that together in July. But from what little bit we have done, we are seeing that, we need to do work surrounding absent parents. We need to do more work involving contacts and making sure that those contacts are, meaningful and purposeful, and you are engaging the children, surrounding what is going on and relating it back to the issues that got you involved in their family to begin with. So that's some of what we're seeing.
Excellent. Shontelle, do you want to, I know you mentioned, I think, some trends that you all had seen that led to some changes for.
I think Cindy touched on it, but we recognized that the work was being done, but it was not being documented based on interviews with our social workers. And so from that, Durham County implemented dictation training, and and we're also a uniformed dictation for across child placement specifically. I think that, in assessments and intake you have the 50-10, but in child placement, a lot of, in Durham County, we were just using Word, and everyone was using their own heading, and things looked a little different. And how do you capture all of the information that is required to ensure that you are doing what's necessary to work your case appropriately? And so that became a trend in looking at information, then in addition to engaging the absent parent. That was something that we were able to recognize through our reviews, that social workers weren't doing it through the life of the case. Some of them felt like when they received the case, I tried that, I made that first attempt, I didn't get anything. And so really showing them through that review process how that impacts the outcome of the case if you don't continually make the effort to engage that absent parent.
That's great. Thank you. So lots of great ideas about targeted reviews involving social workers in the process, how you communicate about it with staff. And Heike, I wanted to ask you, I know since you all have more of a formal review, can you say anything about how you go about the process of collecting data from your case reviews? Anything you would?
Well, I mean, all of our data is kept on spreadsheets, and we do compare one year to the next to see what areas we've maintained or strengthened in. We also use that to identify other areas that we've slipped in that we need to, take a closer look at. I'm sorry. But basically, tracking it from year to year and Excel spreadsheets, it gives you an indication of how your agency is doing ongoing.
Great, thank you. And I think that's really a question and sort of a challenge for the whole state to figure out. We know quality case reviews are a really important part of understanding and collecting data, collecting information about what's happening with families. And so I think we'll be learning a lot, all of us, over the next few years about figuring out how to sort of aggregate that and see those trends. And I know also, Heike, you had mentioned it sounds like some of your case reviews you've already done have been around some identified areas like monthly contacts.
We did do a targeted review on dictation. The thoroughness of it, whether or not all the information is there. And as a result of that targeted review, we did implement a internal case management system strictly for the dictation, so that everyone's using the same format. It's standardized, just that they go through and they answer all the questions. So, it's very difficult to figure out what's going on in a case when you've got some dictation that's on this USB drive, and then you've got other dictation that's handwritten. I mean, this requires individuals to use the same case management system, and when one individual leaves the agency or goes to another position, that dictation is still accessible. So.
And I know I've seen a few folks who are, several people particularly interested in training or reviews or tools that you have related to dictation. And so I'm going to say, I know those are county tools. If we can follow up with Durham County and Cumberland County and see if there might be things that might be helpful to other counties.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, I'm seeing nods.
We have a handout in Pitt County called What Makes a Thorough Assessment, and that is kind of like a documentation guide that we give our social workers when they first start, and then it's sent out every so often as an email reminder. And it's pretty much, if you're hitting the points on that, then you have told that family's story.
I love it. That's great. So we will make a point in our follow-up document to try to capture whatever tools or resources might be available to share with you all. We are at time, or just about at time, so I just want to say thank you so much to our excellent panel, Cindy, Tamantha, Shontelle, and Heike. Thank you so much. They drove to Chapel Hill through tornadoes and thunderstorms to be here with us, so thank you all so much and for sharing some of your lessons learned.